The Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership is a program of the United Nations Office for Project Services and is a multi-donor partnership of government and philanthropic partners working to facilitate sustainable energy transition in Southeast Asia. We empower our partner countries Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, and projects across the region to transition towards a sustainable energy system, generate economic growth, and ensure energy security. At the heart of our work lies a deep commitment to creating a sustainable future, aligned with the Paris climate targets and Sustainable Development Goals. Our mission is to facilitate a just energy transition in Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome. My name is Andres Fernandez, Engagement Manager at Hartree Partners. Today, I will be presenting to you the study on the financial implications of the early retirement of coal-fired power plants in Indonesia on behalf of the consortium. The study on the financial implications of the early retirement of coal-fired power plants in Indonesia was conducted for the direct benefit of two key ministries: the Ministry of National Development and Planning, also known as BAPENAS, and the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, MEMR. The study involved a wide range of stakeholders, including public and private sector actors, multilateral development banks, and other key players in the energy transition landscape. This diverse involvement catalyzed essential conversations about the urgent need to retire coal in order to reduce emissions and shift towards cleaner energy sources, but also recognized the importance of coal in providing a reliable source of energy. This study was made possible thanks to the support of Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership. The project spanned 14 months and involved highly comprehensive, interactive, and dynamic efforts across multiple areas. The lead organization responsible for conducting the study was Hartree Partners, a global energy and commodities firm with over 25 years of experience in energy and risk management, particularly within oil and gas, power, decarbonization sectors, including carbon markets, biofuels, bioenergy, and renewable energy. CBS and NAYEN also supported the study as key consortium members. CBS is a consulting organization from Indonesia working within the energy transition landscape, covering conceptual studies and engineering, climate mitigation studies, energy system analysis, policy and regulatory assessments, and even capacity building. NAYEN is a specialized climate change consultancy who specializes in designing, deploying, evaluating, and advising on climate strategies, just transition, sustainable energy plans, and policies. The study was framed around evaluating Indonesia's path to decarbonization through early retirement of coal-fired power plants. The first question to ask is, why coal retirement? Well, coal is the largest source of electricity generation globally and the largest energy-related contributor of greenhouse gas emissions. Science suggests that to limit global warming to a 2-degree increase, not 1.5, 2-degree, coal-related emissions need to be halved by 2030, highlighting the relevance of early retirement. Global coal-fired power plants are young, continue to be built, and therefore require early retirement to align with climate goals. This study analyzed, evaluated, and provided suggestions on the retirement pathways for coal-fired power plants within the Indonesian context. The study was divided into 3 phases, each building on the previous one. Phase 1 provided the high-level analysis. Phase 2 offered a deep dive analysis including a case study. And Phase 3 provided a sensitivity analysis and key recommendations building upon the previous phases. This study became the first comprehensive report to integrate fiscal, social, economic, and policy aspects into one single document. It provided a holistic approach to understanding the implications of early coal plant retirement by bringing together these critical dimensions into one cohesive analysis. First, we look at what are the implications on the fiscal returns. What are the implications on subsidies, compensations, the direct and indirect impacts on the supply chain, employment, electricity costs, and implications on carbon tax collections. In the financials, we look at PLN's financial capacity to be able to withstand this energy transition. How can early retirement of coal-powered power plants impact PLN's cash flow? What are the replacement options? What are the cost implications? Can there be monetization of carbon credits? And what has to be done to secure financing sources? In policy, we assess the broader implications on electricity policy. Transitioning away from coal has far-reaching effects on how energy is produced, distributed, and priced, which must be carefully considered in policy making. What are the drivers? What are the barriers? What can we leverage from current institutional capacities? And what are the impacts on electricity tariffs? Finally, we present a list of complementary policies that can support the overall power system. These measures include energy efficiency, renewable energy, grid modernization efforts, to be able to create a more resilient and sustainable power system as we move towards decarbonization. A tailor-made retirement decision framework was created for this study. It prioritized CFPPs to achieve objectives such as balancing energy, environmental, financial, and social considerations. Our approach went beyond just looking at the power system and also went into understanding what are the social implications of retiring these plants, ensuring that any decision made would have manageable consequences for the government, PLN, affected communities, and key stakeholders. The questions we sought to answer with this framework were: which power plants can be retired now with consequences that are manageable both for the grid and for society? Which plants are positioned to be refinanced in a way that encourages private sector involvement, making it easier for investors to engage in the retirement process? This framework was socialized with many key players in Indonesia. And while there are other frameworks out there that differentiate from this one, we use this one principally to prioritize energy security, transaction viability, and a reduction in societal implications. This then served our study to develop a scenario in line with Indonesia's commitments and policy, and ordered and assigned a year for early retirement for each of the power plants until the objective was met. This was then the basis of the modeling, which I will now present to you in the next slide. The fiscal and social economic analysis in our study carefully considered how early retirement will impact various aspects of the economy. It principally focused on income, VAT revenue, and subsidy disbursement. You can see on the diagram on the left a bit of our framework. One of our key findings was that early retirement could lead to an increase in income tax due to higher coal exports, as coal is no longer consumed domestically and would be sold internationally at international prices. This, however, has a counterbalancing effect, where there would be a decrease in VAT flows as domestic transactions related to coal consumption would decline. Additionally, we found that electricity subsidies and compensations are highly sensitive to changes in electricity tariffs. This makes it crucial to consider within the policy tariff adjustments and how these might affect public finances and the broader economy as part of the retirement strategy. PLN, Indonesia's state-owned enterprise, will need to overcome certain challenges when participating in this energy transition. The challenges identified were the current high interest rate environment, the state of play of PPAs in Indonesia, including take-or-pay clauses which are highly penalizing, excess and installed capacity in certain systems that lock fixed expenses, high non-current liabilities, and expected payments to compensate retirement of assets. The study highlights that PLN needs to be healthy to allow for this energy transition to happen. We need support in refinancing long-term contracts, enabling investment vehicles to catalyze reinvestment, compensation schemes for power plant owners and debtors, and indirect financial support for the communities to allow for a just transition. Data was a challenge throughout the study, but we did our best to estimate to be able to determine the impacts on PLN in an early retirement scenario. We determined operating profit per plant, income per plant, electricity price per region, known as the BPP. We determined fuel expenses and fuel costs, and then developed some assumptions related to compensation of early retirement, which was based on similar transactions in the region. We conducted this model to illustrate not only emission reductions, but also to visualize the impacts that could happen to PLN in an early retirement scenario, specifically on liquidity and profitability, and see if they could be left in a healthy enough situation to be able to finance replacement technologies. Though there are a significant number of challenges to reach this early retirement scenario, what is clear though is that the impact is huge. We see a 61% reduction in cumulative emissions if we follow through an early retirement program. That is 1,470 million tons of CO2 equivalent avoided up to 2040, highlighting the opportunity of climate change mitigation if we follow through an early retirement program. A key question that started arising throughout the study is, okay, we retire coal-fired power plants, but what do we replace it with? What are the costs? And while this was not the primarily focus of our study, we did consider different options. We considered repurposing, renewable energy, energy storage, perhaps for non-power generating purposes, and we also considered retrofitting, carbon capture and storage, co-firing, even repowering to significantly reduce emissions of current facilities. And though these might be viable solutions for those coal-fired power plants that might be technically or socially too difficult to retire, the modeling is clear. They are not ambitious enough to reach those objectives that Indonesia has set in terms of decarbonization. As we indicated in the CFPP retirement framework, the last component of our analysis focuses on the societal, regional, local impacts, represented by direct and indirect impacts. This is the most localized aspect of our study, where we assess how these changes in early retirement can affect immediate and surrounding areas. First, let's consider the direct impacts. The retirement of CFPPs will lead to significant variation in coal production and capacity levels. This means that companies will need to adjust their operations and potentially divert coal production to international markets to align with changing global demands. Of course, with this shift, there's direct effect on employment. Workers involved in coal mining and transportations may face job losses or employment challenges as demand for coal changes. Now, looking at the indirect impacts, we see ripple effects on mining companies' revenues. Early retirement of CFPPs can compound the variations in international coal demand, which could decrease the sector's revenue, which in turn could affect sub-regional fiscal revenue. Some regions in Indonesia heavily rely on coal mining and may experience economic slowdown from this retirement program. But on the flip side, it could also provide opportunities if done right. By reducing reliance on coal-fired power plants, we can achieve cleaner air, improve environmental conditions in these regions. And as CFPPs are retired, there's an increased participation of renewable energy, which brings both environmental and economic benefits and resilience in the long term for these regions in Indonesia. So my key learning points from this study really come down to two things. First, the fiscal implications are significant. Early retirement of coal-fired power plants brings about some major shifts in income tax, VAT revenue, and depending on political decisions, potentially huge impacts on electricity subsidies. It's clear that these financial changes cannot be ignored. Second, there is a huge opportunity here if done right. The emission reductions from early retirement are material, but a just transition is an absolute must. We have to acknowledge and address the challenges and socioeconomic impacts this will have on coal-dependent regions. Now, as far as the challenges, I see three main ones. One is securing the financial resources and instruments to ensure retirements are cost-effective and transparent. It's going to be a tough one to achieve, but zero-cost financing is something we need to seriously consider if we're going to catalyze early retirement. Two, coordination between government bodies. A clear direction is essential, and it will benefit everyone involved if we can get that alignment across institutions. Three, investments on the grid. We really need more reliable grids in Indonesia to support this energy transition. This study marks a pivotal first step in aligning and strengthening Indonesia's decarbonization efforts. The opportunities are immense, the challenges are real, but the path forward is clear. With that, I conclude this presentation. We look forward to continuing our contribution to decarbonizing Indonesia's economy. Thank you for your attention.